But Al, but let's get started on segment number one.
All right.
And we're going to talk about Fiesta Bowl reactions, okay? You wanted to talk about the good, the bad, the ugly. So kind of play it up for us. What do you mean by the good and bad and the ugly, and kind of get us started there?
I mean, you can really look at this from a lot of phases. You know, the good, you can get the good and the bad, the ugly for Clemson. You can do it for both sides of the game. I mean, the good is this is the game that all of college football deserve. All right, and we got it. That is one of the best things of all year. I mean, all of these playoff games we have, they all seem to be blowouts. I think Georgia and Oklahoma had a really good one not too long ago, but we get a bunch of blowouts, and it's just bad football. I mean, LSU, that game was over in the first quarter. It's ridiculous how bad they bludgeoned Oklahoma. But, I mean, this was a game of two great teams going at it, and they really went at it. Goodness gracious. I mean, like you said, you know, down 13-0 and then 16-0, you start to wonder if Clemson can even come back. So that was definitely the good, is that, you know, once Clemson made that comeback, then it was back and forth. It's the game we all wanted. It's the game everybody wanted to see, which is why it got such good ratings. So that was obviously a cool thing to see. But, you know, the bad, look, you know, a lot of people had things go wrong for him. T. Higgins was out of the game. You don't ever want to see players go out of the game for injuries for any length of time. Then you had, you know, Shaun Wade go out after the targeting call. We're going to talk about that a little bit later too. You don't want to see those players and those kind of things, you know, decide the outcome of a game. So I would say that's kind of the bad we're looking at, you know, especially when one team, you know, thinks they got hosed by officials the whole time. You don't want to hear all the crying about the officials lost the game. Goodness gracious. You know, and then you have some ugly things, and there was a lot of penalties, you know, that really impacted this game, mostly on the Ohio State side, obviously. But if I'm not mistaken, I mean, Clemson had 2, maybe 3 pass interference calls on one drive, I believe by Kayvon Wallace and Deion Kendrick, you know, that extended a Ohio State drive. I can't remember if they scored on that one or not. But there was just a lot of ugly plays like that, and it was just a fun game to watch, really. Even though they had some ugly moments, you know, with the targeting hit and that kind of thing. A lot of people saw Chase Young looked like he, you know, kind of headlock and he wrestled into the ground. There's a video going around on YouTube and Facebook right now of a defender rolling over and kind of, you know, hitting Trevor in the knee with his elbow. It looks intentional, at least by the video. You know, so a lot of people are angry about that. So those are some of the ugly things, but man, there's a million angles you can come at with this game. It was a great game to watch, and overall a great product for college football.
Yeah, I can kind of, you know, repeat a lot of the things you said. Really, for me, the good, when you talk about good, bad, and ugly, the good is always that there's a Tiger win. And at the end of the day, no matter what happened, no matter getting down 16-0, no matter the penalties, no matter the player getting injured, no matter some of the dirty plays that we saw, no matter some of the penalties, holding and things like that, the Tigers win the game. And really, Trevor Lawrence, a lot of Audrey looked at me and she said, "Why didn't Travis Etienne get the MVP?" But if you really think about it, I mean, Trevor Lawrence, he turned into a running quarterback. He was the running back for the team. 107 yards. We've never seen him do something that, you know, do that many yards in a game.
Yeah.
And so for his ability to kind of mold himself to what the defense is giving, basically they took away the passing lanes, which is what Mark and Ellis and we talked about last week, is that Ohio State's going to force Clemson to run the ball. And another thing that they did really well is that they put Chase Young over on to the left side of the offensive line against Jackson Carman. Now you're thinking, well, Jackson Carman's the best player. Why would you put the best player on the best player? Why wouldn't you put him over on Akram and Cervinka's side? Well, he did sometimes, and that is the weaker side, but that is the tendency that Clemson likes to run the ball. And so that scheme there, or that play call, was to stop Travis Etienne from running, and it basically did. I mean, he had a hard time, only a little bit over 3 yards per rush there last night, and didn't really break much big in the rushing game. But man, when he got out in the open and Trevor Lawrence threw to him in the screen pass, in the jump pass, when he touched it, even though he didn't touch it very much, he destroyed the defense. Man, he's so fast. We talked about how he'd only had 182 carries, and he's way more healthy, way more fresh than any of these guys like Jonathan Taylor, J.K. Dobbins. Mm-hmm. Obviously, you see these guys, J.K. Dobbins, just a few tackles into it, his ankle's destroyed, and he's hobbling off the field. Travis Etienne is so fresh.
Yeah.
He gets the ball, and it's like the Flash out there. Boom, gone. I mean, it was amazing to see. He didn't even have to really break a lot of tackles because he was outrunning everybody. And you're talking, like Kwok said earlier today, he was outrunning 5-star linebackers. I mean, just blowing the doors off of them. So these aren't guys that are just, guys that just barely made it on the team. And then obviously the big scare, T. Higgins, not in the game, but he came back after halftime. I would say that was a good that he came back after halftime. I'd say the bad, Al, is that it seemed like no one stepped up when he was gone. Overton had a key third down pass catch right at the sideline, right on the first down marker, missed it completely through his arms. I believe he had the opportunity to catch it. Higgins would have caught it. Hunter Renfrow would have caught it. Overton's got to make that catch. That would keep the drive alive. It's all about keeping the drive alive. It doesn't have to be pretty. You just need to get the first down. And Clemson was getting into third down very, very frequently, and they needed to convert. They needed somebody to rely on. And another thing, I was kind of scratching my head, where was Justin Ross when T. Higgins was out? I felt like he would be the natural guy to take over. He really didn't seem to do that. And it might be because you lose having 2 weapons down to 1, so then Ohio State could focus on Ross only. So it might have been a little bit of that. I even tweeted about how the fact, if that's the case, then let's put Ngata out there, which they finally did. It took them a while. But to me, I mean, if you're going to not redshirt Ladson, let's get Ladson out there. Let's put him into some space and see what happens. Same thing with Amari Rodgers. He was kind of locked up all game, almost all game. It's great when you're an Ohio State fan and you say, we locked down everybody. Well, except for that one 65-yard pass that, got him into field goal range and basically helped him win the game. We locked them down, though, the rest of the game, except for that one time that they won the game. I mean, that's the way I feel. It's like they're like South Carolina fans that just wear red, a different color red, and they're in a different state. But then Nolan Turner, Dabo Swinney came out and said, hey, he was kind of holding his head down. He was kind of beat up because he had over pursued on a couple of plays. He had been the lone guy on that 4th down touchdown, and he got space, which is a very difficult play. You got to choose inside or outside. He chose outside. The guy went inside. I mean, I don't really know as a defensive back what you can really do, especially a safety. It's not used to covering that close like that. Right. It was a difficult play for Nolan to do. But Dabo Swinney said, hey, pick your head up. You're going to get the interception to close this game out. And he did. I mean, we know Dabo has a direct line, a 1-800 number straight to God, and he can get those kind of favors there. I'm just joking in that sense. But I will say that it was definitely a called play for sure. For me, the defensive line didn't, as far as bad, I would say I'm concerned in the sense that they didn't get any hurries. They got more sacks than Ohio State. They got more tackles for loss than Ohio State. They didn't get any QB hurries. And even though Ohio State didn't sack Trevor Lawrence that much, I think it was only 3 times, they did hurry him a lot. So he had to make very quick plays. And it wasn't until Brent Venables kind of started throwing linebackers at him, multiple linebackers, or Kayvon Wallace at him, or even DK at him, or even AJ Terrell at him, that they started hurrying the quarterback. And so I'm a little bit concerned with that. And then as far as the ugly, hey, even a Clemson fan, a diehard Clemson fan, doesn't want to see a key player get kicked out because of targeting, even though I believe, and we'll talk about it in the next segment, that it was an appropriate call in targeting. We actually have photo evidence that he lowered his head. He was basically looking at the ground. He wasn't looking at Trevor Lawrence, and they collided at heads with the top of his helmet hitting Trevor Lawrence's ear hole, which is textbook targeting. So I know I'm getting into it a little bit further, but I would say I don't want to see a key player out of the game. I'd love to see 2 teams fully stacked against each other. Yeah. But that's never reality, Al. It's never reality. It's only reality when you play on Madden. And maybe that's the problem. We got too many people who want to play on Madden like it is an online one-on-one where you have you can turn off penalties and you can turn off injuries and you can turn off fatigue and they just go at it. Well, that's not realistic. So if you're sitting here saying, well, Clemson won because X, Y, Z, injuries, penalties, targeting big best player out of the game, those are all things that even Clemson can't control. So we need to move on from that. That's victim mentality. That's excuse making. And I'm not going to accept it on this show. I'm not going to say it for Clemson. And I don't want to see an 8-time national champion say it as well. I think that's ridiculous. You're acting like your USC junior over here, like your best bowl win or your best bowl memory was a sack against Michigan, a sack fumble against Michigan, in the Outback Bowl. You're acting like your trophy cabinet is only with an ACC championship from like 1963. All right, you're Ohio State. You're an Ohio State fan. You have the biggest fan base. You have the biggest college campus and college student body. And you're over here acting like you've gotten beat by your rival 6 years in a row. So, I mean, I was not expecting a double dose of Gamecock-isms from Ohio State. But I'm having to deal with it, and I'm working through it. And maybe I should just ignore it. Maybe that's the best thing for my blood pressure. But I just can't handle it. But anyways, that is kind of our thoughts of the good, the bad, the ugly. Al, thanks for bringing that up.